Hello and thanks for joining me as I explore using marble mazes to teach systems as is seen in the Common Core. The PA Common Core standard this project was based on is extremely simple. Describe a system as being made of multiple parts that work together. A slightly different take comes from the National Common Core, which speaks of describing connections between a series of events, ideas, or steps. I use the marble maze as a way to explore the connection and interaction between multiple parts in a system, and I think that this is a perfect way to instantly see how changing different variables gives you a different result. In a marble maze system, we are experimenting with changing the direction of the marble in different ways and using the concept of gravity combined with different types of materials to roll through, and as well as connectors to attach the pieces together. I glanced at a picture of the marble maze frame in the Art of Tinkering book by Karen Wilkinson and Mike Petrick, and they give you kind of a breakdown of basically what their thoughts were on that. I had a little bit of carpentry experience, and so I worked through building the framework to hang the maze. I chose to cut a sheet of pegboard in half lengthwise to have a play area for both sides. So you'll see the front side, and there's also a back side to this. And then I cut the top 2 feet of the pegboard off because I knew 8 feet would be unstable and the kids would need a ladder to get up there anyway. So I used some 2x4s I had laying around. For the frame, I chose to cut it in half lengthwise as well to put between the pieces of pegboard so that they wouldn't take up too many of the available holes, and also to lessen the weight as this gets pretty heavy otherwise. Used screws, obviously, instead of nails for strength, and in case I ever need to disassemble part of it to make modifications. I also used a finishing blade with extra teeth for the pegboard, as it's basically glued together tiny particles of wood, although it was a pretty good quality kind, and then a regular blade for working with the lumber. I used heavy 2x6s for the feet to give it some bottom weight for stability, as 6 feet tall could be a little bit tippy otherwise. And then I also added triangle braces that extended up the sides a bit. The challenge here was getting the angle just right on these, and then also on the bottom, and actually I had to reverse the angle here. And then you fasten this as well to the side, so the side and then the feet, and then together get that all to line up, but just a little bit of tinkering to go along with that to get it to be solid. I introduced the maze itself to my own children in stages. I first gave my son tubes and sawed off water bottles and things like that just to play around with a bit as I was finishing that. And then I gave him a bunch of just kind of pieces of things, like here's a funnel with the bottom sawed off so that the marble would actually go through. And then just stuff out of the recycling bin. This is just like a container for vegetables with a place to saw it here. How would you use that? Well, I drilled holes in it, and then that way you could put hooks through it and things like that. As well as just some things I had laying around. Here is an old roller, and drilled holes into it, which was a bit of a challenge actually. And so you could put hooks into that for it to roll through as well. And then this was kind of an interesting concept with a little bit of duct tape, part of a cereal box. You can use that as an innovative way to roll things too. The one that my son really thought was awesome was actually the washer hose. I had like an extra one that I had sawed off part of it, and I used. He loves that, and they all do really so because you can actually get it to turn around the whole thing and go from one side to the other, which makes it a lot more fun. We had to experiment with a lot of different kinds of fastening to the pegboard. I started out with duct tape, and that works pretty well, except for then it's a little bit annoying to move it from one place to the next, and you go through a lot of duct tape. And it depends on if you want your kids playing with duct tape, I guess. Somewhat harmless. Also, we transitioned over to scraps of electrical wire. Just happened to have some around. And so then I cut a piece of that, and then you could bend that really easily to use to go through the pegs. The only problem is that you can bend it really easily, and then it gets bent back out of shape and things start falling off, and yeah. So that didn't really work perfectly, so I transitioned over to cutting up, sacrificing one of our metal hangers, and so I just used some pliers, and this little extra bend is just from when it was originally bent, but just making this little S essentially, and that works pretty well. It's nice and sturdy. The only problem with that is then they have a hard time getting it out to adjust it. So I looked around and found something else which I happen to have laying around. Probably nobody else does, but this was from, I think, from like a curtain or something at one point, and you can get things, you can slide things through here to hang them, and that seems to work pretty well. So just some different ideas. You can also, I happen to have some clamps, drilled a little bit bigger hole in that, and then you could use that to hang sort of things that would not otherwise be that easy to hang, like something like this. I thought that can work, to be a little bit creative about the process. The next stage, this stage of the process really demonstrates how you often use the basis of a system, which is the actual marble maze frame with the pegboard on it, and then you change variables around the whole idea, and so the framework for the system is there, but it can be changed and metamorphosized in a lot of different ways. I think that it applies also to other play systems like Legos, for example, which can easily transition into the real world, like using cinder blocks or bricks, or even they have styrofoam wall building blocks for building houses. One brand is Nudura. There's a lot of brands out there where you stack them on top of each other, interlock them, and then you pour concrete into the center of them. Then you have a super thick and efficient wall for your house. As an extension of the practicality of the marble maze for the future, I thought, why not do something that would be a skill for the future? So I experimented with different kinds of PVC. The bigger stuff took up a lot of space and it's kind of expensive, so I thought about 1/2-inch PVC, which I had a ton around, and the marble didn't quite fit. So I used 3/4 inch, which is used in home plumbing quite a lot. And the marbles slide through there perfectly, and the kids can experiment with changing the fittings. So we have couplers just to connect them together to make different lengths. And speaking of different lengths, I used a pipe cutter to cut them and make them into different sizes. I'm not going to cut one right now because it takes just a minute. Just to cut it into different sizes. And even if you cut it and go, oh man, I wish I had a long one again, you can just use the coupler to make the same length that you just had, basically. The other thing with these is that there's different kind of fittings you can put on here. So there's a 90. The only challenge with this is that you have to have kind of a fast speed coming down, or else sometimes it can get stuck in that 90-degree angle. So I also put in here some 45s, or you can call them 135s if you want to. And so they go through here pretty much no matter how you do it. The only thing is, of course, it has to be past level in order for it to roll. I threw also one last thing into here, which was just a T, mostly just to give the kids something to experiment with and to see what they came up with. So I think that there's a lot of possibilities here for learning about systems, and in this case you could extend it to looking at pipes in a house or something and just see how all those systems work together. I've actually begun printing off different examples of marble mazes for inspiration for the different designs now, to keep the interest going and to deepen their understanding of the possibilities of this particular system. There's a few different kinds. Some are pre-made, but I wouldn't worry about buying something from a store necessarily for this. It's liable to be kind of expensive, and it's more fun to come up with your own stuff anyway. One interesting thought I saw was using a pipe insulator and cutting it in half, and then you could actually make loops and things like that. I thought that was kind of interesting. I think there's some interesting other extensions off of this, which was to use like to glue magnets onto pieces of PVC, or I think it was mostly the fitting itself, and then you could use a piece of sheet metal or a magnet board of some kind, or your refrigerator if you really wanted to have marbles noisily rolling around your kitchen, and then you could use that to quickly adjust how the marble maze system is set up. As a last kind of extension of this, I thought it would be interesting if you were trying to get into writing a little bit. You could have them, of course, just write about the process and the things that they tried and stuff like that, kind of like this video. Or you could also give them kind of a story of sorts, where you could ask them to imagine that they are the marble, and then ask them questions like, what is it like rolling down through the tunnel? What are the scariest parts? Maybe the dark places or something. What parts are the most fun? What would you like to be different about your marble maze now that you're inside it? I think there's obviously a lot of directions you could take with this, and I hope this was helpful to you in your search for keeping the fun in learning. If you have any further ideas, please feel free to share them with myself and others, and thanks for watching.